kelainan warna dan kepercayaan. Bangkit, mari kita tebang dan cantas pohon-pohon prejudis bangsa dan agama. Mari kita seru dalam suara yang satu, suara bangsa Malaysia untuk Malaysia. Bangkit, mari kita peringatkan kerajaan bahawa kuasa mereka adalah amanah dari kita semua. Amanah yang kita semua tuntut untuk dilaksanakan demi kebaikan Malaysia dan kita semua, demi kebaikan umum, bukannya untuk disalahgunakan untuk kebaikan dan kepentingan peribadi. Rosmah, bahawa kita sebenarnya yang berkuasa, bahawa mereka diletakkan di dalam kuasa oleh kita, dan bahawa kita sebenarnya penentu. Tidak perlu kita berlutut dan bercium tangan menyembah ampun bagi hamba. Kita sebenarnya yang berkuasa, bahawa kita mampu dan akan menarik balik amanah kita sekiranya ianya tidak dipenuhi dengan adil dan seksama. Mari kita peringatkan mereka. Mari kita bangkit. Kita kerjakan tanah air ini untuk kepentingan semua. Mengapa perlu kita sanksi dan takutkan sesama sendiri? Tanah air ini hanya satu. Semua kita di sini dan tiada lain tempat yang boleh kita tuju. Di sini kita lahir dan di sini mungkin kita mati. Namun dalam masa di antara mula dan akhir itu, kita di sini. Mari kita usahakan bersama, majukan bersama dan nikmati bersama tanah air ini. Tanah ini juga yang akan kita tinggalkan kepada anak-anak kita dan anak-anak mereka yang di sebelah sana. Itu tak ada dalam teks. Mari kita bangkit dan pelihara tanah ini, dan kita akhiri segala yang tidak bermanfaat. Kita akhiri semua lakonan dan gerak tarik yang bagai candu dihulurkan kepada kita selama ini. Kita akhiri cerita-cerita dongeng dan cakap-cakap kosong. Kita buka topeng-topeng warna-warni agar kita nampak yang nyata, agar kita nampak senyum sinis Rosmah Mansur yang melihat kita dipersendakan. Bangkitlah anak-anak Malaysia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you, Ismail. Okay, now before I invite Datuk Seri Niza to launch the book, let me just say this. Datuk Seri is a very popular man, as I'm sure you know, and an electrifying speaker. So he gets rapturous receptions wherever he goes and takes the mic. But he has never got a lawyer bureau reception before. Okay? So as I invite him up, please give him a lawyer bureau reception. Please join me in welcoming the Rakyat's Perak Menteri Besar, Datuk Seri Niza Jamaluddin.
ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. And let there be among you a group who enjoins good and forbid evil, and they are the victorious. Chapter number 3, verse number 104. Dan hendaklah ada di antara kamu satu kumpulan manusia yang menyeru kepada ma'ruf, yang mencegah kemungkaran, dan mereka lah orang-orang yang berjaya. Sadaqallahu azim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Siau tasyahau. Sakutri ilai. Walakum meri bahyu. Terperkal meri bahyu. Alhamdulillah wa syukurillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. My dear friends, Marcus and Melissa, the whole team in Lawyer Buru, not Lawyer Bro, Lawyer Buru, distinguished lawyers who have been part of my team, who counseled me before, headed by Haji Sulaiman Abdullah. He's not here. Let's give a warm reception and applause to Dato' Ambiga Srivan Srinamas here. At one point she led the team in the federal court. And my heartfelt thanks to my brother Edmund Bond and all his team, Amir Hamza, Zul, Ranjit Singh, Razlan, and the rest. Couldn't mention here. My dear Datuk Ngeh Kuham, Chairman of the AP Perak, please stand up and give him a warm applause. Datuk Ngeh Kuham, you are MP for Keluas and also an Assemblyman for Sitiawang. And my dear friend, Mr. Ngeh Hock Chai here as well. Give him a round of applause. They've been part and parcel of the team that defended the rights of the people of Perak. Saudara, rakyat negeri Perak dihantukan oleh UMNO Barisan Nasional 53 tahun. Rakyat negeri Perak diugut. Sekiranya mereka menukar kerajaan, maka akan ada huru hara di negeri Perak. Give a warm reception as well to Mr. Leong. So mereka diugut, mereka ditakutkan. Kalau tukar kerajaan, nanti akan ada huru hara, akan ada rusuhan kaum. UMNO Barisan Nasional has been playing that game for the last 50 years. So the Perakians, we were duped under that environment. Not willing to change even though we knew very well that we had to change. Tapi oleh kerana ketakutan, maka kita tidak berubah. Akhirnya, pada tsunami 8 hari bulan Mac, we made that drastic historical change. The Perakians were brave enough, we changed the government. And that was actually a crucial time where Pakatan Rakyat was first formed in this country. It was formed in the town of Ipoh and in the state of Perak. Saya nak ambil kesempatan ini nak ucapkan rakan-rakan saya daripada Loyal Group dan rakan-rakan saya daripada the Fraternity of Litigation and Law yang telah pun memberikan sumbangan masing-masing untuk menulis dalam buku Perak State of Crisis. Kerana apa? Kerana 20 halaman itu saudara-saudara semuanya mencerminkan sejarah apa yang berlaku. It is the first time that the rule of law has been literally raped in this country. Never has it happened before. It did happen in Sarawak, it did happen in Sabah at one point, yes. But it had never happened in that scale, in this environment and in this situation where the rule of law has been completely raped, ladies and gentlemen. Kawan-kawan, baru pertama kalinya undang-undang negara telah diperlakukan begitu rupa oleh mereka yang berkuasa. Secondly, you observe the judiciary system. The whole court has been questioned greatly by the masses. What happened? It has been totally subservient to the regime and the people that have the law in the land. And so for the first time you see Perak is covered under police state. All the time you can see whenever we have an assembly, you will find loads of policemen, uniform and ununiformed. They've been surrounding the building, surrounding our state legislative assembly. And fourthly, for the first time in the Perak history, we find that the masses are coming together to fight for their own rights. Nak menunjukkan bahawa pertama kali dalam sejarah Malaysia, mereka bangun dan mereka sedar akan hak mereka. And it is the first time as well that the Constitution of Perak is being tested for the first time. Dan kita lihat saudara-saudara bagaimana daripada Mahkamah Tinggi Kuala Lumpur, pada Kuala Lumpur High Court, we went to the Federal Court. Before that, we went to the Court of Appeal, and then we went to the High Court again. And it took that short time over a period of 4 months. Cuma saya nak beritahu saudara-saudara at this particular point how democracy has been completely rigged in Perak. There is completely no democratic principles anymore. And we have set a very risky and dangerous precedent in this country. And what is that precedent? A precedent where we do not need to have a show of majority in the assembly. Tak payah lagi lah. Tak payah lagi nak gunakan Dewan Undangan Negeri. Dan tak payah lagi nak gunakan Parlimen untuk menunjukkan ada majority, tidak ada majority. Majority can be decided whether the Menteri Besar Chief Minister ceases to command the majority. That can be decided not in the assembly anymore. You can decide that in golf courses. You can decide that in palaces. You can decide that in hotels. And you see the dangerous precedent it has set. Mana-mana daripada kalangan pimpinan yang boleh bawa sejumlah wakil rakyat beritahu kepada ruler ataupun His Royal Highness that I have now got a majority, that they are now siding with me, therefore the regime loses its power. They just crumble at that point. Likewise, saudara-saudara, if Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim ataupun saudara yang berhormat Lim Siam ataupun saudara Tuan Haji Guru Haji Abdul Ali Abang, any one of them, just to bring 35 member of parliament into the palace now and request from the Sultan or request from the Yang Pertuan Agong that I have now got majority, therefore Najib just falls down anytime today. That is the consequence of the precedent set by the judges who misinterpreted the Perak Constitution in relation to item 16.6 as well as in relation to item 36.2. Saudara-saudara, saya nak ambil kesempatan ini terima kasih kepada rakan-rakan saya daripada lawyer buruh yang telah memberikan kerjasama sleepless nights just to defend the right of the people in Perak, hoping that the right of the people of Malaysia will be totally and equally defended as well. Because it all started in Perak. The whole crisis began in Perak. Why? Because Perak would like to lead the change. We would like to make the whole revolutionary change in this country. Total change for the landscape of politics here in this country. Kita takkan dia berlaku di negeri Perak, saudara-saudara. Jadi untuk itu Pakatan Rakyat dibina pada pukul 1 pagi 8 hari bulan 2 di negeri Perak, tuan-tuan. Formally formed Pakatan Rakyat, where PAS, CAP, Keadilan come together. And now we have formally entrenched in the society that Pakatan Rakyat is the order of the day, and we want to replace UMNO Barisan Nasional, and we are heading toward Putrajaya. Be as it be, we shall fight. I could have taken a very simple approach. I wrote a letter to His Royal Highness on the 4th of February 2009, where 3 assemblywomen and assemblymen of Perak has been kidnapped. 3 of them has been kidnapped. We call their parents. We call their wives and sons and kids. Where are your dad? Where are your mummy? Because we do not know. Kami pun tak tahu. And they have been hidden from our interaction over 6 or 7 days. And all of a sudden on the 4th evening at 5:30 in Najib's residence in Putrajaya, we saw the 3 of them saying, we have now hopped, we have left Pakatan Rakyat, and now we are supporting Barisan Nasional. The whole government collapsed. Ladies and gentlemen, when I wrote a letter to His Royal Highness seeking for the dissolution of the State Legislative Assembly, I knew very well that I'm writing to a person who knew about law, because he was an ex-justice, he was an ex-chief justice of the whole country. And he knew about law. He's been respected throughout the Commonwealth nation, that he understood law very well. And for a simple understanding of some residual powers that I had as a chief minister, I wrote a letter to him. And in my letter, I seek for the dissolution of the State Legislative Assembly to advise His Royal Highness. And I was summoned to the palace at about 1:30 on the 5th of February 2009. That was just a day after I sent the letter to seek for the dissolution of the State Legislative Assembly. Now, in my mind at that time, my frame of mind was to seek his dissolution. Therefore, when he commanded me to see him, obviously my mind was thinking that the Legislative Assembly shall be dissolved. Surprisingly, my dear brothers and sisters, when I went and I was right in front of him, and he lectured me almost 10-15 minutes, telling about these 3 assemblymen and assemblywomen who have hopped and supporting Barisan Nasional. He also mentioned to me the Barisan Nasional leaders, Najib Tun Razak, Zahid Hamidi, the Chief Secretary of the State of Perak, and another guy by the name of Anwar Zaini. I repeat, Anwar Zaini. They're the ones that approached His Royal Highness and brought in 28 other Barisan Nasional assemblymen and assemblywomen, and saying that now you have lost your majority. They have signed a letter undertaking that they shall be supporting Barisan Nasional. 15 minutes he was lecturing to me, and I already knew that, that signs are not very good for the people.
that my earlier intention to get a resolution from His Royal Highness who understand about law is completely changed. Now, before he uttered his last statement to command me to leave the post, then I requested humbly from him for a session for me to talk 12 points with him. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I could not at that time contact any of my Pakatan Rakyat leaders, let alone my past leaders in Perak. I could not be using my handphone to call my past leader. Neither could I call any of my Pakatan Rakyat heads. What should I do now, because I am in front of His Royal Highness? I have never been in that situation before in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, it took me almost 15 minutes to mention 12 important items which I wrote in my blog. And out of that 12, I remembered vaguely in my mind a book which was presented to me as a special gift by His Royal Highness almost a month after I became the Chief Minister of Perak. And that was on the 16th of April. He presented to me a nice gold-plated book that is entitled The Constitutional Monarchy, the Rule of Law and Good Governance. You cannot buy this book in a normal bookstore. Now, I told His Royal Highness those books are only meant for lawyers. I am not a lawyer because I am an engineer by background. I only know equation. He said, never mind, take your own time and read it. Now, on that particular afternoon, before he summoned me to resign, I mentioned one of the words which made his face completely sour and look down upon me. And I mentioned to him, Tuanku, peganglah kata-kata Tuanku yang terkandung dalam buku tersebut. And ladies and gentlemen, I uttered the words verbatim. And I'm going to say to you now what I uttered to him. And I said, Tuanku, you mentioned in that particular book, under normal circumstances, when the Prime Minister approaches the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to seek for the resolution of the Parliament, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall not withhold his consent to the resolution. He only purely acts formal. You understand that? And saudara-saudara, bila dia dengar apa yang saya sebut, probably he could remember what he wrote in that book. Under normal circumstances, when a Chief Minister approaches His Royal Highness to seek for the dissolution of the State Legislative Assembly, then he has got no choice but to dissolve the Legislative Assembly. He must not withhold his consent to dissolve the Legislative Assembly. And that equally applies to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong as well. Ladies and gentlemen, as soon as I uttered those statements, he raised his head and he said, Chief Minister, you must resign. And the conflict began upon the point that I refused to resign. And my refusal to resign was uttered to him in a very solemn language. I could have mentioned to him, I said, His Royal Highness, I beg to differ. He could equally understand. I could even say him in a Malay language. He was brought up in Batu Gajah, and I was brought up in Kampa. We spoke the same dialect, and I could have said to him, His Royal Highness, Tuanku, patik tak sio letak jawatan. I repeat, forgive me for not making that to be understood by all. Patik tak sio letak jawatan. Well, any Perakians living in that area would have understood that language solidly. But I uttered to him in the most humble of language, which has never been taught to me before. But I uttered to him, ampun Tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun. Sembah batik pohon diampun. Batik pohon sembah durhaka, Tuanku. That was the statement that I made. And I had tweets and I had Facebook after that you made the best of all the language when you were right in front of Royal Highness. I was in the palace. I was in front of him alone. And I made that statement in the most decorum way. And it was actually thanked by a professor called Safian, Professor Abdullah Safian, something like that. And he said that the language that you use was the most appropriate language at that time. Ladies and gentlemen, UMNO, especially the youth of UMNO, they took